Welcome to Workplace Wake Up, your go-to podcast for practical employment law guidance. I'm Jennifer Shaw, the founder of Shaw Law Group, and I'm here to help HR professionals and leaders navigate the legal minefield of the modern workplace. Each week, we tackle real-world issues with clear advice and a little tough love. Let's get started. Welcome to Thanksgiving week on the podcast. Oh my gosh, tomorrow is it. I've been cooking up a storm, planning, organizing, setting the table. I'm so excited. It's going to be so much fun. I just love Thanksgiving. And of course, I want to take a moment to express some gratitude for all of you for joining the podcast. We have had over 200 episodes. This is episode 205. It is all thanks to your support and your dedication and your kind thoughts and your great ideas. I get so many emails from those of you who listen, who come up with suggestions and thank me for talking about things and tell me how much the podcast helps you at work. And it's just amazing. I love it. And I feel like it's one of those things that is a real gift of my job. I'm thrilled that I get to do this. So thank you. I am very grateful to each and every one of you. I hope you will take a few minutes tomorrow to think about the things that you're grateful for. I have a gratitude practice that I do every night before I go to bed. And I have to tell you, it has just been really amazing for me to end each day thinking about the things that make me grateful and the wonderful things that have happened. That doesn't mean everything's wonderful, but when you can end the day or maybe begin the day on that note, I think it's amazing. So thank you all so much for being here with us. So we're going to talk about performance reviews. We've talked about performance reviews a lot on this podcast in various iterations. But many of us do reviews at the end of the year. Okay, some of us do them on anniversary dates, but a lot of people are doing them at the end of the year. And I've talked to a lot of clients lately who are working on their performance reviews or performance evaluations, and they are really struggling because they feel like it's been kind of a weird year. The politics in the workplace have been active and there's been a lot going on. The economy's been up and down. We've had interest rate issues. The stock market's been pretty volatile. So now they're sitting down and thinking, okay, how am I going to do a performance review that matters? Because what we're tempted to do, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, is to be nice, right? We're tempted to say all the lovely and wonderful things that somebody brings to the table. And of course, we should be doing that, right? We should definitely recognize the benefits and the value that our employees and our teams are bringing. But when you do performance evaluations, it should be a snapshot of the prior review period. So whether you're doing a quarterly evaluation, an annual evaluation, whatever you're doing, you've got to look back and say, okay, what were the things that went well and what are the things that could be done better? This temptation to only talk about the good things really creates false expectations, because if you're a supervisor or manager who only talks about the good and then that employee gets somebody else down the road who likes to give them constructive feedback, now that employee is going to have a really hard time understanding the constructive feedback. They're going to be wondering, well, wait a minute, like, how am I supposed to be doing this? This doesn't feel like it's fair. I never had this kind of negativity before. Right? So this is the kind of thing that we want to think about. Okay, what is the way that we can communicate people's amazing work, their opportunity areas, and do that all in a way that our message is heard? And very importantly, that we hear the employee's message back to us. Because performance evaluations, performance reviews should not just be a one-way street, right? You may have your ideas about what you think went well and what you think needs to be addressed differently, or the growth or opportunity areas for your employee, but that doesn't mean they're going to agree with you. And you have to have a conversation about it in a way that makes sense. And performance evaluations are really a place where we can make sure that we're all on the same page. I had a conversation with one of our lawyers a couple of weeks ago about workload, and I had really misunderstood something about the workload that was being assigned to this person. And I think what they were feeling is that I was ignoring all these things that they were saying about having too much work, but I had categorized in my mind, oh, well, they're okay with this work, but not that work. That wasn't the case. I didn't figure that out until we sat down and talked about it. And sometimes when we're so busy and there's so much going on, we don't think about sitting down and having the conversation. A performance review, whether it's, like I said, annually, quarterly, whatever it is at least one time when you're going to be sitting down and saying, okay, I'm listening to you, you're listening to me, let's try to figure this out. So one of the things that I want to sort of disabuse people of is this idea that we shouldn't do performance reviews. They take too much time. They're not really effective. They don't really bring about change. Well, if you do them right, they do. I agree they take time, but think about how much time it takes to hire a new employee and then train them. Think about that. There's so much that goes into that process. If you're going to spend a little bit of time putting together a performance review and sitting down and talking to someone, it's worth it. Of course, you have to give more than just annual feedback. We should be giving regular feedback to our employees on a regular basis, daily basis. This is what's going well. This is where we could use some work. But the formal evaluation is the opportunity to sit down and really talk it through. I find that they are incredibly valuable for creating positive culture in the office because people know, hey, this is what I'm doing well. This is what I can improve on. I value it. I appreciate it. I like it. And I think that when we think together about how to create a culture and a climate and an environment of positivity, of respect, of professionalism, of efficiency, we've got to do it by being honest. We've got to do it by having integrity. So I had a couple of, it was a long time ago, I guess, now that I think about it, maybe 10 years ago, we had an employee survey that was anonymous, and I asked people to give feedback on the office. So everybody felt like it wasn't really anonymous because it was going to be easy to tell who gave the feedback. I'm trying to think for this year that we're doing our performance reviews, how to do a review of me where people feel comfortable giving me feedback. I mean, I know what a lot of my opportunity areas are. I get overbooked. I speak too quickly. I maybe don't take as much time as I should to give instructions. I feel like I'm making sense, but sometimes I'm not. I know all that, but it would be so helpful to hear from everybody else. What can I do to improve? And I'm the type of person who welcomes that feedback. I won't get upset about that. I value it. But I haven't quite figured out how to do that in a small organization like we are, how to do that in a way that makes people feel comfortable. The bottom line is, what I'm telling you is I crave the feedback. I know almost every employee feels the same way. They want to know what they're doing well. They want to know what they should work on. They want to make sure that they're on the same page as their coworkers. I don't think of our office as being stratified, like there's me, and then there are senior lawyers, and then there are less senior lawyers, and then there's staff. We're all here together with one goal. Make sure that we treat our clients well, that we give them accurate and timely advice, that we do thorough and competent investigations, that we train them in a way that is engaging and educational. That's what we're all committed to doing. Sometimes things can get in the way of that. So the performance review process is the place for us to be able to sit down and really give each other an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it is of our time to say, hey, let's think about how things are going. You've got to be specific. You've got to be honest. You've got to be fair. You've got to give concrete examples. You can't say, Jen, you're never available for a meeting. Are you kidding me? Have you seen my calendar? I'm available for plenty of meetings. Now, if what you really mean is, I don't feel like I get your full attention when I'm sitting with you, that's a different issue. And that's something I've been working on, but I may not be improving. I may need more instruction on that. I may need more feedback on that issue. So when we're talking about being specific, I want you as leaders in the HR world to be giving specific, timely, direct feedback so you encourage other people to do so. I think sometimes we worry that by being fair, we have to be harsh. No, fairness just means clear. It just means giving clarity. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago when we were looking at the problem with being nice and how being nice can sometimes interfere negatively with being a good leader, right? So When you do these reviews, these evaluations, I want you to follow basic principles that we all know, right? You give concrete examples. You separate intent from impact. Look, Jen, I know you're trying to do this, but here's what's not working. Okay, I'll give you that you're trying to do the right thing, but it's still not effective. And these reviews, these evaluation meetings need to be a conversation, not a lecture. They can't have a conversation if they're not given the review in advance. So I wouldn't suggest giving it a week in advance so people are stewing about the constructive feedback you gave, but even a couple of hours in advance can be a good idea. I also want you to remember, because I think we forget this sometimes, that performance reviews are actually intended to make things better. They're intended to help the employee perform and improve. They're not intended to get rid of someone, right? You never want to use a performance review as a disciplinary tool. The performance review is the snapshot of what has happened over the review period. It doesn't mean that you're going to say, okay, this is what's happened, and as a result, I'm firing you. If you're going to fire somebody, you don't give them the performance review. You tell them why you're going to fire them, and you go from there, right? So I want you to think about how to deliver these performance reviews in your organization in a way that is effective, that is clear, that is fair, and that moves the ball down the field, where you feel like you are in fact making a difference. Where things need to change, you are encouraging them to change. And where things are great and you want them to stay the same, you don't want anybody to do anything different, beautiful. Let's make sure we understand how that works too. Because when you're doing these reviews, I want you to think of what the purpose is. It's not just to check the box. It's not like, oh, we have to do the reviews. Oh, we have to get this done. No, that's really not what we have to do. So we do these reviews because they help us improve. They help us figure out where there may be gaps in knowledge or understanding, where we might need to make changes in terms of resource allocation. All of those issues come up when you're doing an effective performance review. And if you don't do that, your employees feel like you don't care about them. Now, I'm in an interesting situation this year because we have some lawyers who've been with us for a very long time. And they're all great. And I write them the same evaluation almost every year. I mean, I change the words and I change the concepts, but generally I say, you're doing an awesome job. And so I started thinking, well, maybe they don't want evaluations this year. Maybe we'll just have the meeting and we'll just talk about what's on their mind. I don't know. I'm going to ask them what they think because I want to give them that opportunity. Some of our less senior lawyers, I want to make sure they have the opportunity to sit down and give me their feedback and review my feedback and the feedback of other folks who worked with them. So we're definitely going to do things a little bit different in the firm this year in terms of how we do reviews, but the concept will be the same. It's letting people know what's going well, where we need to improve, and how we can get things done in a better, more effective way. I cannot overestimate the value of a good employee, the value of an employee who listens to feedback, who wants to do their best, who wants to meet your expectations. It is incredible to have employees like that. And they deserve your time and your attention to give them feedback. They deserve that. So if you're in a situation where you haven't done them in a while or someone talked you out of doing performance reviews because they thought they weren't effective, please reconsider that. I have never litigated a case or gone to a labor commissioner hearing or a mediation where a performance review wasn't helpful. They just are. And when you talk to people who have succeeded in their jobs, who have maybe moved up or who have promoted, they always tell me, oh, I got such great feedback from my mentor. I got things that I hadn't thought of myself, or if I thought of them, I wasn't sure how to implement them. So your employees deserve that kind of commitment. Take some time, whether it's on their anniversary date, it's at the end of the year, it's every month, every quarter, however you do your reviews, look at them critically, folks. Think about how effective they are. Think about whether they're actually meeting the goals that you have in your organization. And if they're not, change them. If they are, keep doing what you're doing. Everyone, thank you for joining me today. Enjoy your Thanksgiving tomorrow and your nice Thanksgiving weekend. I'm very excited about Cyber Monday. I like to do my holiday shopping on Cyber Monday, so I'm very excited. Everyone, just keep up the good work. And again, take a moment today for a little gratitude. I'll talk to you soon. Before we sign off, I want to remind you about our 25th annual legal update. We have 3 sessions. I want to make sure that you sign up for them before they fill up. We're going to talk about all the new statutes for 2026 and all the relevant court decisions, as well as any other agency developments. So go to our website, sign up, space is limited. Workplace Wake Up, including our guests and hosts, do not provide legal advice in this podcast. Do not act upon any of the information discussed in this podcast without first consulting a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Workplace Wake Up. If you found today's discussion helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your HR and leadership teams. For more insights, training programs, and legal updates, you can visit us at shawlawgroup.com.